Okay, so how is the sound today? Okay, so I'll start now. Just tell me if you can. Sounds good. That's good. So there are a lot of weak groups in this game. So I would say black is fairly solid in the lower left corner and on the lower side. And I guess the weak groups are mostly in the left part of the board. So that white group and the two white groups and the black group in between them. So I guess I should go back to the beginning of the game and go through the moves a bit. Oh, they're moving fairly quickly, don't they? Um, KJ does like weak groups. I'd say the weakest group is Black's group in between the white stones, but White's groups are not completely alive either. So I'll go back to the beginning here, and let's see. So they started with star points, and okay. So this is, I guess, it's getting to be fairly standard, and White jumps in too. So up to this point, I've seen this before. This is pretty common opening, I think. And Black invaded. Yes. So this is, for the time being, it's an attack on White's wall in the upper left. And this move is actually, it's the recommended move with, this is the recommended move with computer programs. So that's just getting some height for the black stones before switching back to the lower left. Frankly, thank you very much. And White plays here. This is a point where I think someone was remarking that Black lost some points in the computer score, the AI score with this move. The move that you're supposed to play is the cut here, and this would lead to an exciting fight. So if Black cuts here and White tries to capture that stone, then the Tetsuji here is the Kosumi on the second line. So this is the Tetsuji that makes Miai of curling to the left or playing a Hane to the right. So if White plays here and Black plays here, White is weak on the outside and cannot capture it. On the other hand, if White goes straight down here, this gets to be fun, I guess. Black can squeeze in this stone pillar Tetsuji and will win by one move. So that was a win for Black. So White would end up squeezing here. So White can squeeze like this. And if Black goes straight down to the first line, this is going to be dangerous. That would just be too dangerous for Black. So instead, Black would capture the one stone. And this is probably good for Black. White's so low on the first and second lines. So I think I like this for Black. And so we go back to the beginning. Maybe a bit too much detail here. But White will probably extend here. Black goes straight down. And the corner is not alive. Black moves out. And it's going to be difficult for White to capture those two black stones on the side, and gets really, really complicated. So this could have happened, and this is the variation I've been seeing before, and it was the suggested move in this case also. But Black slided. And why would that's I don't know how to pronounce this name, Butse. Why would SGS decide against the fight here and go for the weaker move? That's a good question. Um, I don't know. This is the move that this kind of move has been played before in professional games, and it's actually pre-AI, so it's a pretty common variation there. It is very tactically difficult. So maybe he thought that KJ had some research on this position. That could be. They're both they both do a lot of studying with AI, so they probably have some deep knowledge of these variations. Maybe something I don't know about. So yeah, so this was, the score is fluctuating a bit, but it's just like it's a few percentage points, which is not going to mean that very much for human players. Playing this move immediately is sort of interesting. White could accomplish a similar thing by pushing through and playing Atari. But in this case, when White extends, there's no forcefulness to this move. Whereas in the game, next White can cover on the second line, or if Black plays the connection on the second line, then it's better for White not to have that liberty filled. So it's better for White to leave that as it is. So it's a very subtly better move than pushing through. So here Black is just reinforcing that group in the lower left corner. If Black plays next in the corner, Black will have two eyes. So for instance, an easy way to make two eyes would be just to play here and play here, and that would be alive. So that there's the option of living in the corner, and with this move, Black is out in the center. So that group is fairly much settled for the time being. And this move has the advantage of creating a move at h17. So White had to protect once here, and the kick reinforces Black on the lower side. So that was okay for Black. That was what Black wanted to have happen. And now, okay, so I jumped a bit. So Black wedges here. And White, the third 3-3 invasion. I guess it's a big move. Could Black play the Tarian trade? C16. Maybe D16 at H3. Having trouble following the comments there. So maybe asking, can Black play the Tarian trade, was about this move. And it was Bodo W asking. This would be another way to play, but White would then be able to capture these two stones and would still have an invasion on the lower side against that Black position there, which is 4 spaces apart. White would be looking at an invasion next. So I think the game move makes sense in that Black was inducing this and reinforcing the lower side for Black. So it looks like KJ is spending more time than Shinjinso. I think in general Shinjinso is very well researched in the opening, and he doesn't need to spend so much time on it because he's been quick in the last few games. I think he has 4 straight wins in this tournament. So that would start with the 10th round. Let's see, maybe Tang Weiqi. I'm not sure I remember the Chinese player's name. And then it was Yama and Yang Dingxing and Ichiriki. So he has 4 straight wins. And he's on a roll here. So he's in good form. KJ is the final player of China, representing China, of course. And there's one more Korean player. That's Park Jung-won. Park Jung-won. I have trouble pronouncing names sometimes. The wedge was a big move. Covering there would have been big for white. It's bigger than you might think. So, I don't know. Would I have black? Where would I have black play? It's really hard to say whether it was the best move or not. Like, black could have played something like... Nowadays, some people would play the kick. I think there's a number of what... It wouldn't make much difference. Just a came away. So the knight's move. Probably something like this would follow. The wedge does create a cut. It creates various ways to cut. So that's shinuito. Let's get back to the game. Feel free to ask questions. So white dived into the through 3-point. This is actually reducing the value of that cut on the left. So, for instance, I'm not sure how white will play the next move. But if black does cut here, then the profit that black gets on the upper side is reduced by white's life in the corner. So it's not so important. R14. Pincering on the right, I don't know about that. Black's group in the upper right. Oh, white played the Hana here. This is somewhat unexpected. Black is probably going to cover and connect. Pincering on the right, when black is not settled yet in the upper right area, it might not be a good idea. So I would continue playing with the black group there. So for instance, what I'm talking about is if we assume this variation, then actually in this case, pincering would be okay. Or black might curl with this move. And this would be one of the complicated variations that people get into nowadays. Where white could extend and black would pincer, and stuff like this would happen. It would be a fight starting on the right side too, with more weak groups, just to add to the fun. The ladder at f14, I'm not so sure that's important, because I'm not sure that white wants to escape from that ladder anyway. That's Bodo W asking if the ladder at f14 was important. And there is a ladder, this ladder, it is a potential problem. I'm just not so sure that it's a good idea for white to be doing that. So something like this might happen. It would heat up the local fight. So this, I'm not sure whether this is going to work or not for white. Oh, this is the game variation. So I was talking about this variation here. So black did crawl and white extended and black pincered here. The idea is that if white does want to at some point play this move here in the upper right corner, one of these two. But if white does it immediately, black will crawl to connect underneath. And these two white stones are not really doing very much. So white would like to be able to cover here. And it gets a bit sharp when that happens. So black will probably cap here unless black plays the knight's move. Cyphus is saying that I confidently said that white doesn't want to escape from the ladder. I'm not completely sure about that. It depends sometimes. The move escaping from the ladder it was not occurring to me. So KJ has paused here. The clock on Cyber Oro is saying that he has 26, 27 minutes left. And it's probably a good estimate. So he seems to have used about 10 more minutes than Shinjin saw. That means black could connect underneath. This actually cools down that area, and white played the Kosumi, which is always a big move. So both players seem to be actually, although there's these weak groups on the left side of the board, on the whole they seem to be playing fairly tightly, fairly solidly here. Toon Jirapast is saying, I hope no one misclicks again. And I think that Shin Jinso is going to be pretty careful after doing that once. So he's had enough of that. What's the difference between N3 and N2? Okay, that's a good question. That was Vu Tren Ding, if I'm pronouncing that close to correct. The difference between N2 and N3 is that, and this is pretty general, it happens in different joseki also. When white plays N3, then this push is going to be 100% forcing. And especially when white has started with moves like this, sometimes it can be a bad idea because it becomes easier for black to surround that white group with that forcing move at 4. And when white plays the knight's move, black's only forcing move is this, which is, it's generally less effective towards the center of the board because it's on the third line, and it's also a weaker shape with white having this point to play at later, so there's more room for white to move in. And so the knight's move, although it's low on the second line, it is giving black less forcing moves, less forceful moves, and white can place more strongly from the center, or in this case, more strongly from the direction of those two stones. So if we just ignore what's happening on the left side is going to be the main fight here. But if we ignore that and look at the upper right, when white does something like this, it's probably better to have that white stone at N2 instead of N3, because black has no effective forcing moves against it. And so white will have more room to move around in the center. So actually playing on the second line is a move that is focusing on the fight in the center. Even though it's on the second line, even though it looks low, it's actually focusing on the center. So to get back to the game, and black played this move here. With this move, white is not 100% alive on the left side. C9 surprised you. This is actually Black is starting to make a base for this group. If black plays another move, let's see. Let's just say that something like this, that doesn't work for white. Let's just give white a random move and say black plays here. If black plays here, then black would have the beginnings of a base. And this would be pretty close to being alive. And also be taking away the base from white's wall there in the upper left. So the idea is that black can play two moves and make a base. It's also taking away the base from white's group on the left side. So if black had not played that, for instance, here, then white would easily be able to live on the left side. And that would be fairly big in territory, and it would be reinforcing white's wall in the upper left. So it's the beginning of an attempt to attack white here, this the move at c9. All right. Chris Davis remembers that I played Li Chanho in 2001, and I remember playing Li Chanho. I wouldn't have been able to give you the year. Yes. And it was not the first round, so I forget who I beat to get there, but yes. And with this move, the idea of escaping here, it's probably even worse idea than it was before. Because this group that white has on the left it's just not alive, so it's a bit dangerous, I think. Bugcat Catbug is asking, do I have any plans to continue Redmond reviews? And yeah, I my reviews with the AGA on their YouTube channel, they've been sort of stopped recently. I've had to learn a lot of things to get this channel going, and a lot of issues with things I didn't know how to do, making live streams and stuff like that. And I'm still learning new stuff, trying to get rid of the problems I have. Just a few days ago, that was game number 11 of this Nongshim Cup. I was having issues with my sound, so I'm hoping everyone hears me this time. I think I fixed it. So because of that, I was spending a lot of time learning how to do this stuff on my own. And after a while, I hope to be spending some time again with the AGA YouTube channel also. Would white c7 be good for keeping pressure on the black group? White c7... c7? Oh, white c7. Okay. White didn't play that, but let's go back. So that was Ben Ballantyne asking, would white c7... that is a fairly important point. Bodo W, thank you very much. A gift from Bodo W. But then black would be able to attack this white group. And so it's, I would say, although it's a good double-purpose move that gives white's wall and upper left some eyes, and does take away black space, it's probably premature. So white played here. And now maybe white is thinking of escaping from the ladder or playing... actually, in some cases, it might be better to play here. And just close black in. This is probably a more elegant way to play. What would I play here? That's a difficult question. Maybe I should ask Frozen Soul's question first. What would be the process of a foreigner becoming an Ise? Um, do pros still sponsor Western players? That's a good question. I think the process of becoming an Ise, provided you have somewhere to stay in Japan, would be relatively easy. You just submit some games that you've played, and the teachers of the Insei school will choose whether you're good enough. They will be your age will be an issue. So if it's a child, then the child will have promise. Unfortunately, there's fewer. Most pros live in condominiums now, so there's not so much room for people to have people boarding in. And there used to be a building where people could stay, like a kind of a hostel for young players, and they don't have that either anymore. So setting up your life in Japan would be the difficult part, probably. Chris Smith is asking any particular reason I haven't reviewed Shinjin So before this. I think basically Shinjin So being a player who is at the top of the Go world right now, I most often encounter his games in these live broadcasts. I might have done some with AGA, I'm not sure I remember. So in games that he's actually in the act of playing. So that's how I would do it. We'll probably be seeing more of him. So black played a key point from behind. And yeah, I like this move. And white's connection there is just a little bit weak. So that's what black is looking. So the idea is that if white is going to protect that, let's see, where's the pointer? Okay. If white is going to protect that, that would give black the opportunity to protect also. So might actually start the ko here. No big moyo, that's right. Okay. Let's get back to the game position. Okay, so white did play the hane here. And black takes. And the natural follow-up for white will be to extend here. For the time being, white is connected. And black's strongest local move would probably be to play here. But it might be a good idea for black to live first. I would probably play this one first. Okay, so this is the board position. B15. B15, actually, yes. B15 is something that is a tesuji here. Let's do it in this board position. It would usually be a tesuji in which if black captures the one stone, white can break through here. And this would be good for white. But the problem with it is that black can play here. And it's I'm sort of doubtful that white could play away from this Atari. But if white connects, black can capture the stone. And so in this case, white's attachment on the second line has been a failure. It has not worked. So that was Bodo W asking about that. It is a one of the shape moves. It's a move that you should be looking at. So it's worth talking about. So black continued with living in the corner. And white has played a hane. This is not necessarily going to be forcing, but it's going to create a lot of forcing moves afterwards. If I expect black will cover, and white will play here. Or maybe actually the hanging connection. So this is basically it's strengthening white's lower side. And next white can play here, and I guess white will force with something like this, threatening to kill black's group with this sequence. So black would end up adding a stone. So that I think that's the limit of what white can accomplish there. But he is not covered yet. J4? J4, J4, white just connects at I3. Oh, J4 is up there, yes. J4, the cut J4. That Scythe is saying that he looks at J4. How close is black to being able to cut at F12? F12 is not very close. It's dangerous for black. Let's take a look at that. F12 would be this move. White has a forcing move here. White actually, let's see, how would white go about doing this? It does look dangerous for black. Well, actually, even if white just plays this way, then the black group is not very happy, even if black has played this exchange. So it would not be good. Okay, Catbug is asking if you have time for an off-topic question. What do you think about Ichiriki and Iyama? And people say that Ichiriki does better internationally, and indeed he does. So why can't he take Iyama's big domestic titles? I think basically it is the time control, and I think it's pretty clear that Iyama does better in the long time controls, where he has a lot of time to think. And he's better at using that time than most of the players. So I think that's what it is. It's just that Ichiriki is better at thinking quickly, while Iyama is better at using a lot of time. And it's also the fact that I think Iyama is a very formidable player, but he is using a lot of his... he is very much focused on the domestic titles. So that could be an excuse for him doing so poorly in the international tournaments. White's not going to connect it. Oh, J4. Oh, something happened to my voice. White's not going to connect at J4, I don't think. In fact, if white connects at J4, that would give black this peep, and that would be kind of an extra profit for black. So I think if white's going to play there, the move that I would choose to connect there would be to play here, which would have more potential towards the center of the board. Or white could play this move. It's been a while, so I forget who suggested this move. This is an important move that takes a base for white on the side. So this is something that would be worth playing. So white has not connected on in the lower left corner. White might just leave it. Go Dave 89 is asking about the Patreon teaching games, and they are theoretically simuls and most likely in a different time zone. Yes. So for the time being, I'm suggesting times that are 9 o'clock a.m. and 2 o'clock p.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. for me. And 9 o'clock is in my time zone. That's UTC plus 9. So, for instance, in America or South America, in most places that would be the mid-afternoon. And so going from that time to the evening for the Americas is one kind of time area, and people are can suggest slightly different times, so that they can do it after coming back from work or such. And I am giving a schedule for weekdays and some weekends also, because there were people who liked one or the other. And then the evening time slot, which is 6 o'clock for me, 6 p.m. That's usually a good time, I think, for people in Europe or in that time zone. Because, for instance, in Europe, I think that the evening is going to be mid-afternoon. So, for instance, on a weekend, that might be a good time for those people. So I'm still in my second month of doing Patreon, so still working it out. So there's room for negotiation there. Boutze I hope I'm pronouncing it close to the right pronunciation. Is asking, are there any international tournaments that have long time controls, or is this specifically for Japan? And it's pretty much just a Japanese thing. Throughout the years, there have been a number of international tournaments that had about 3 hours, but that is gradually moving towards shorter time controls. I think there have been ideas, since the Chinese and Korean players do not have domestic tournaments that have long time controls. There are some of the players who sort of want to try that out. And so there have been suggestions. And some of the players, like I think Lisadol was one of the players who said he would like to try out longer time controls. Somewhere around L5 is a good place for black. L5, L5. Maybe, yes. That was Tron. Sam A. Domestic titles have one of the highest prizes. Yes. It's interesting when the Japanese are not doing so well in the world international tournaments. The Japanese domestic titles do have more prize money. So arguably he's focusing on them because of that. Okay, we're getting a lot of moves somehow. So let's just back off a little bit. So here, white played out. And again, it's not really that satisfying for black to cut here. It's not really accomplishing very much on the upper side. It's just a few points. And white is still strong in the center. So black started with this move. And if white connects, black can cut here. So this is much more severe. And white connected on the left. And black's main object here is not only to cut that one stone on the upper side off, but black is creating a position where he can start pushing here and cutting white off. So it was a kind of a forced sequence there. And I think black's going to continue pushing through here. I think the reason we're seeing black pausing a little bit is that black is probably considering the push or the knight's move, one of these two. It seems natural that black will want to push through, or maybe play once here first. That's another thing that could be considered. So something like this would be what springs to mind for me. Let's get back to the game. So it's like this here. The black group on the left is not strong, but it has some eye space in the center of the board and potential eye space on the left. So for instance, if black plays here, black has probably at least one eye on the left side and potential to make a second. And black does have what looks like an eye towards the center of the board too. So it's not as if black is about to die, but in the process of the game, we might see white attacking it later in the game. Thumper says, good morning from Britain. Good morning. It's afternoon here. H6. H6 is a move that black could play. That was Rick Rubenstein. Okay, so black pushed immediately, but H6 is a move that black could have played. So black could have played here first, and then here. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes it fills black's liberties. It's not, I don't think black is really that afraid of this move. Black will probably be playing, I don't know. When white plays here, and if black is forced to connect here, that would be a case where black would be wishing that he had played h6 first. But I guess black can play it at any point here. It's still, and black would probably play something on the outside. I don't know. I would be thinking of a move like this, and maybe sacrifice those two stones. But for the time being, white has to stop black from playing this move anyway. So I think okay, two more moves. So I think the simple answer to that question is that black can play at h6 at any time, and white is probably not going to play here yet. So there's no rush to play it. And in this variation, black is attacking white's 3 stones on the right and taking the offensive here. It has the indirect effect of reinforcing black's group on the right too. C16. I'm not really sure I understand Joshin Stripe's question. Let's see, C16 be normal in response to E15. E15 was black's attachment at the 5th line here. And C16 is an attachment on the 3rd line. It doesn't seem to be natural to me. I'd say the game is still fairly close. Black is attacking at this point. So white is going to have to deal with that group on the right there. Mm-hmm. Yes. Derek Neal asks if I'm annoyed by all the questions yet. You're helping me do this. Thank you. Victor Makovichuk, thank you for the present. And I'm sorry about mispronouncing your name. I'm pretty sure I did that. In response to e14, yes. When black plays that, there is the tesuji of white playing an attachment on the third line. In this game position, I don't think it would have worked very well. Yes? The game is slowed up a little bit. Maybe I could go back to that position. And the move that was being talked about was the attachment here at some point. And the attachment probably does not work very well. When white's stone there, sorry, not the black stone. I better get rid of that one. The attachment probably doesn't work so well with black attacking like this and having a forcing move here. Let's see, something like this. It's not working very well. Not quite. So it is a tesuji, but I don't think it works very well in this board position. And as yes, A. Salon was saying C16 is a lot more normal if C11, and that's this white stone here on the side, on the third line. If that was at C12, which is one line closer, then it would have been more easy for white to play that kind of move. And it always depends on the position, but in this case, maybe not. Von Hanung, thank you for the present. Very generous. B17, what about F14? Actually, with B17, instead of F14, I'm going to say black should have cut here. But this becomes very, very sharp. That was Sam A asking if black should curl around at F14. And this would be relatively easy for white to get a position on the lower side. And white's group on the left is not going to die. So, for instance, something like this, white would still have possibilities to be moving out in the center. So actually, it would have been a very strong move for black to cut here. And it is a bit of a mystery for me that Shin Jin-so did not choose this. This is a move he's probably researched because I've seen it before in computer programs. It's the move that black is supposed to play. So interesting that he didn't play it. He must have some reason. Okay, to get a bit further into the game, Reed Stevens is asking, does black ever need to worry about dying on the left side? If white played something like C7. C7, yes. So that's the black group you're talking about. So for instance, let's take it a bit further. For instance, somewhere around here, white playing at C7 is, as far as taking away black's space, it's a very important move. But black is not really in any immediate danger. For instance, black could, for a local move, black could play something like this, or something like this. Black would be having some space towards the center of the board, and would have no trouble living. So it's not in that much danger. Or in the corner. The corner is perfectly alive now. c16 after black played e14. Okay, that would have been a big move. Um, that's okay. Let's look into that. I think it was a multiple number of people saying that. So it was Kjell Vidiji. I hope I'm pronouncing that close to correct. So let's get back to that position. When black played here, um, actually playing this move, locally this is a pretty important move, and it gets rid of the threat of this move. So black would probably, of course, play the capping move, I think, here. But this would be actually, it's not only a big move as far as territory is concerned, taking the corner reduces the threat of that cut that black has on the fourth line. So this would actually be a plausible way for white to play. It's a move that white could have considered. So getting back to the game variation. White is just making shape for those stones on the right side. And probably needs another move there. Another stone. And it's going to be fairly close, I think. It looks like it is a game that could go to the end game. I'd say black has something close to 15 points on the upper side. A few points on the right side. So that's slightly more than 20. And then less than 10 points in the lower left corner. So that's less than 30. And then probably more than 10 points on the lower side. So 40 or so points. White has somewhere around 10 points in the lower right corner. Somewhere around 10 points on the lower side. Around 10 points in the upper right corner. So that's 30 points. Then a few more points. So it does look like if we add Comey to white's score, it does become a close game. So maybe we'll have an end game in this case. There were a lot of games where it just fell apart in the middle game, but maybe not this time. There are a lot of points in the center of the board which are probably not going to turn into territory. So it's going to be if it does turn into an end game, it's going to be a fairly difficult end game with a lot of unusual shapes. Pros are said to be very good at end games and know all the shapes and stuff like that. That's because the shapes in the corners and on the sides happen all the time. So there's shapes that we sort of just know by having played them numerous times before. It's just we simply know how to play them and what the standard way to play is. But when we have these shapes in the center of the board, it's usually less clear. Less clear how to deal it, and it's a shape that you have not seen before quite often. So it's more difficult to play correctly. Bugcat, Catbug, that is right. KJ is the last player for China. And Korea still has Park left. So Korea has 2 players. And so if KJ wins, maybe we'll have a live stream tomorrow too. That's the plan. And on Cyberoro, it's saying that KJ has about 6.5 minutes left. And Shinjinso has close to 20 minutes left. So this is actually, it's sort of, it depends on how quickly the operator put the moves in. But it does give a general idea of how much time the players have, I think. Um, A. Sullivan is asking about the Emily finals and when they're scheduled. And it's really, I don't know actually. There seems to be a tendency for the international tournaments to be scheduled at the last moment. And that probably has to do with the fact that they're being played on the internet. They're playing remotely. And so they don't have to set up hotels and stuff like that for the players. It's probably easier for them to set it up at the last minute. So I often don't know about the schedules until a few days before. Is there a chance to attack White's, I guess that's lower right corner? That corner is pretty much alive. Usually Black would just play a straight down at f18. In an extreme case, Black would play a Hane on the second line and a double Hane. So White's trying to get some extra space here and make use of that cut on the right. For instance, the idea being that if Black connects and White plays here, there is the threat of trying to make Black connect at this stame point. So Black doesn't really want to do that. And that's what the pause is about. Black is probably going to think of attacking on the left here. The Golden Panda Cup. There was a Golden Panda Cup that happened, I think it was last year, sponsored by PandaNet. I think that could have been a special thing that they were doing just because of the COVID-19 virus, the COVID-19 virus messing everything up. So they did something special. So the answer to that, Coast is asking if the Golden Panda Cup is happening again. I don't know. I hope so. Thank you, Chris Davis. Thank you for the present. 012. 012. 012. That is a big turn. That is a move that Black could play. But the situation there in the center of the board, right now it's a bit volatile. So, for instance, if Black played here now, let's, okay. And we assume something like this. You can see Black's stones in the center of the board are getting a bit thin, those 3 stones there. The AI hated White K7. That's just R850. White K7 was K7 was this move. Well, this is a very vulgar move. My snap reaction would be that AIs tend to dislike moves that are bad shape. It's not a good shape move. Hard for humans to judge that. Like maybe it loses something like 1 point. Okay, so Black jumped. So that was dealing with that problem that I was talking about, where if Black plays away and White jumps here, then White has all these extra forcing moves. So Black jumped here. So that settles all of Black's problems elsewhere. Even if White cuts there, it's not going to be an issue. Black's pretty much connected, has a fairly strong shape on the upper side and the right side. So black can ignore it and start playing in the center. Something like this, for instance. So the cut is not so scary anymore. And if black had instead played this way, then white, if black had instead played this way, then it would be more of a problem that white would be starting to connect up there. So that would not be so good for black. So that makes sense to me. And white is going to, since the cut at M, no, that's L, L8, L6, the cut at L6 is gote. So white wants to, instead of cutting there, white probably wants to force black to connect at that point. And black doesn't really want to connect, okay, the dame point. Suddenly it's moving very quickly. So black has sort of created a very loose connection there and has surrounded the white wall there. That wall, it's not going to die, but it's going to be pushed around next time if white leaves it. A Solon is saying, does this feel like a peep that you really don't want to answer? And I'd say yes. Yes, black doesn't want to connect that point that it's only worth 1 or 2 points maybe. H10, H10, and C7. Okay, so white plays, so this is C7. I guess KJ answered that for me. And with this, white has made 2 eyes. So this was a solid move. And H10 was a black stone, so I'm not sure what that means. The komi is 6.5 points. That was Cyphus asking about the komi. And Nongshim is a Japanese, it's a Korean company. And so the Korean rules generally have 6.5 points. Before black played H10, it would have been a good point for white, yes. Before black played H10. That was fairly recent. Black played H10 now. But white didn't really have time to play H10. Like that, if white had played it with this move, it would not have been forcing. And this looks, I'm not so sure about that white group. How would black attack it though? Maybe black would just play like this. And maybe white's not going to die there, but it's going to be a bit cramped. So this is probably going to be painful, making 2 eyes inside there. So the moment white played this move, which pretty much settles that white group on the right. Now if white plays away, this will be threatening a kind of a snapback-like shape with this, for instance. A lack of liberties. So this, the game move here is an important move, and black gets here. So this was good shape for black, but I don't see that white really had a good time to play this move at H10. And now white lives on the left. Black G18. And it's black's turn. Q. Q18 is a move that black can play at some time. And that would be setting up a ko there in the corner. But it is kind of a desperate move, though. Q18, actually, usually in this corner, black would play P18, because this would set up, this would set up the jump here, which would be more effective in taking away white's eye space. Q18 is something black might play if black was trying to set up some kind of a ko, for instance. It doesn't really work in this board position. But for instance, this ko, in which if black has a ton of ko threats, then it can continue like this. In this case, black can... if black has enough ko threats, maybe black could do something like this. But I'm not so sure this is going to work for black. So in this particular game position, it might be necessary for black to push through once and play the ko. Sometimes if black has a lot of ko threats, black can do this. And it would be a very strong way to attack white in the corner. But for an endgame move, it would be more normal for black to play this way, because this would be forcing, and it would be sente. It would keep a tempo. So in the game, black plays here. Oh, black attached, and you can see that this is threatening to cut white off there, and white extended once. So I think the process here is that it's going to reinforce black in the center. If white pushes through here, black can cut on this side. Oh, yeah, well, black can cut there. Something like this. And it looks just a little bit dangerous for white. There's no way for white to make a living shape there. Derek Neal is asking, are there tournaments between Go AIs the same way as there are for chess AIs? Yeah, I think they have tournaments. Actually, for a few decades, I think there have been tournaments between Go playing AIs. So that was before we had the neural networks. And the sponsors have changed a couple of times at least. So I'm not sure exactly which sponsor it is that was is the most latest sponsor for the computer tournaments. You know, actually, I think they do still have the tournaments, but it's a big issue that they have trouble. They need the engineer, the computer engineer, to actually come and deal with the computer that's running the program. And I think there's an issue with travel between countries becoming more difficult. Has sort of interfered with that, and that they have trouble gathering to have these tournaments. So basically in this shape, black does have, let's give white some random move. Black does have this forcing move here. So it could be done this way. And this is going to set up a cut here. So black is threatening that, that white group's, threatening to cut it off. Seems reasonable that white would be adding a stone somehow. So the question is exactly where should white add the stone? Well, the human ones, if you have a referee, that's Rick Rubenstein saying it's funny that it's prevented the AI tourneys more. But if you have a referee, the humans can play on the net. Olivier Dulac is asking white f13. That would be a solid way to connect up. Thank you, Sameh. Subscribe to my channel. I will continue to be providing stuff. So it doesn't look like there's any groups that are going to die in this game. Okay, Koas is going to bed. Good night. Thanks for watching. The center right, does black have any good forcing moves against that? I find it hard to say. It's not 100% alive. It could be the most effective move. Okay, white's protected with the hanging connection. It could be that the most effective move is just simply pushing through here. And white would pull back. And white has something that is getting close. For instance, in this shape, white is close to having two eyes. Not quite 100%, but the fact that black is not so strong on the right there, it makes it okay for white, I suppose. So something like this would be one way that black could continue to try to attack white. A white stone at e10 would have changed the status of that variation. So that was Ofer Zivoni, if I'm pronouncing that correct. So if we assume that there was a white stone here, an exchange for this stone, this is something that white might have been able to play at some point. This would have actually been a connected shape there. So conceivably, at some point, white could have found the timing to play this push, which would usually be answered by black too, and it would have changed what happens on this side, because now white's going to be okay. With that exchange, it's okay for white. So that's potentially an important exchange that white could have played it at some point in the game, I think. White Q11. White Q11, cutting on the third line. It's not dangerous for the corner. That's Thumper asking, would white Q11 be dangerous for the corner? So let's, for instance, let's just have a random black move. Cutting here is not dangerous for the corner, and that would be this variation. It's just a disaster for black on the side, and white's corner is actually, unless we have this desperate ko here, if black is just going to play some normal move, it's going to be alive. So this would be a disaster for black. But the problem is that when white cuts here, black will just play an Atari from underneath, and maybe in this case something on this side. And it's not really accomplished anything because black is alive on the side. So there's no implied attack that's going to happen here. Okay. Yang Xi says AI suggested H18. H18? Looks like it must be this one. And that's the position which is, that looks like it's, it could be a ko. That's an interesting move. That's probably a very strong move. So if white plays here, the idea is to connect underneath with this ko. So that would be a strong way to play. In this case, if black plays here, white can win the race to capture in this case. With 8, that's the Tetsuji. Or if black plays here, now this is going to be a ko. If white plays here, and the ko this would be a very effective way for black to continue here, actually. So yes, that is a very strong move. Otherwise, it could be that black is feeling okay with the territory, in which case black would be continuing, well, probing white's group in the center, for instance, stuff like this. In this case, if white plays here, Black does have some extra profit here that's going to happen with this. This would be a bit painful for white with the broken eye there and the cut at N8. So this is kind of a shape move. If white pulls back at 2, black can curl around. If white plays here, then of course this would be taking away some of white's eye space. So this kind of thing is something that I would at least be looking at as a possibility. But if black can... Oh, black curled around immediately. And this is quite similar in that, okay, if white plays here, in this case also black is probably going to play here. And it's probably not so good for white. However black does it, like this would work. So maybe a slight advantage here for black, but it's a very close game. It's still a close game. Hmm. Bugcat Catbug is saying, as a SDK, that's a single-digit Q. He finds it easy to lose many points gradually in the early endgame without really noticing. And that's very true. It happens all the time. So white did do the straight connection, as Rick Rubenstein suggested. And black still has the option of pushing through there once, but black might just leave it. This exchange that black has just played, for instance, black now has a local continuation here, which would start to build the lower side. So black has improved his position in that area. But that move that Yangshi was showing us, that he says the AI suggested H18. If this move works, I guess it depends on the Kothras, but if this move is played, it would suddenly turn the game very sharp, and it would be more important than any of these normal endgame moves that I was talking about. White K2. I believe the meaning is K18. K18 would be a big move, or J18. That Cypher is asking, should white play K2? K2 is on the other side of the board, so it wouldn't be a very good move. But K18 would be a big move. I think the count is slightly in black's favor here. Let's see, black has something like 15 points in the upper left corner, several points on the right side, so that's a bit more than 20 points. And several points in the lower left, and probably at least 10 points on the lower side, plus some potential. So let's see, that's 25, 30, 35, 35 to 40 points. White has 10 points in the upper right corner, and maybe a bit less than 10 points in the lower right corner. A few points in the center, so that adds up to about 20. And the lower side is in question. So since black has the initiative here, I think black has a choice of playing that H18 move or playing some other kind of endgame in which black gets a larger territory. So for instance, okay. It looks like I missed a few game moves. So black has played straight down here and straight down here. So black was, in this case, black is playing a more simple endgame in which case black's idea was probably something like this and something like this. Maybe playing this one too. To get something closer to about 20 points on the lower side there, which would give black 45 to 50 points and a lead in territory. So I think this kind of indicates that Shinjin-so is feeling fairly comfortable with the territorial score. But white countered with this. It's sort of questionable whether this is going to be forcing or not. And black pushes through here. So it's getting a bit sharp now. And when black pushes through and cuts here, the white group on the lower side is not yet alive. So white will have to add a stone to it. And then white's group on the left could come under attack. So black is starting his attack here. In many cases, I've noticed that Shinjin-so, he starts playing very solidly, but later in the game, you can see him attacking very strongly. Yes, I think Cyphers is saying this is maybe it gives KJ a chance again. I think that a mundane endgame would have been very difficult for white to win, while this fight here probably gives white more chances. So I would agree with that. Well, white needs to find an elegant way to settle both these groups that are in trouble here. So for the time being, for instance, if white played something like this would just be dying here. That would just be dead. So that's a good example of what white doesn't want to do. So white has to come back to the lower side at some point. So for instance, like this, or I guess this would work. And then black would try to attack white on the right side, maybe, with something like this. Could be exciting. And black does have potential to gain some territory here while going on the attack. So this is the game position, and black has attacked the lower side. This lower side group is not alive. Suddenly, it's a very exciting game here. White is trying to counterattack in the center of the board because white is already in trouble on the lower side here. The lower side is just, it's not alive. So already white has sort of if black plays, for instance, if black plays here, white's going to be dead on the lower side. But then, of course, white would probably play here, and the left side would be. It looks dead too, so that would be big. So that's probably not good for black. And just judging from the times shown on Cyberoro, I'm guessing that KJ is already in overtime. So in overtime, I think he has 1 minute per move. And it looks like Shinjin-so might have a couple of minutes left. Rick Rubenstein is saying that in all of these games, Shinjin So has never seemed to be in any trouble, and I agree. He plays a very solid and um, goes for thickness rather than territory. He plays a very solid game here, and in all of the games that I've been watching with these live streams, he's been able to turn that thickness into an attack towards the end of the game, and this is what he's trying to do here in this game against KJ. Elias No Go is asking, is that an online game? And I would say yes. Yes, it's they're playing on the net. They do have referees watching them play the game, so they don't really have any opportunity to use electronic devices to help them play the game. They're just playing on the internet because they can't travel so easily. If black takes white on the lower side and white captures black on the left side of the board, that would be good for white. So black has to save that. Black has to save that group on the left. Yuta Yama has come to say he's a fan of Ichiriki and Yuta Yama. So that explains the name. Frozen Soul is talking about Shibano here. Shibano Toramaru. I'm sort of surprised he hasn't done very well in the international tournament so far. I think he's the type of player who would have opportunities in international tournaments, just because he has some experience in quicker play with shorter time limits, and he seems to do well. He plays a lot of games on the net, so he's used to the kind of the atmosphere in these tournaments. So black pushes through. And Shibano's style, I would say, his style is closer to the top players in China and Korea. He plays a much more, a very sharp game, usually. Cyphus is asking, he's wondering if I see the chat when it shows up on the stream or when we see it in the chat. I don't know. I think I'm seeing it earlier than, I don't know. I think I'm seeing it on time. Yes. I've seen it already. I'm seeing the comment after Cyphus's comment. Okay, so the game is continuing. So white's group on the lower side is completely dead now. And what is white getting in return? That's a mystery to me. White will have to try to kill black in the center of the board. So for instance, cutting here and connecting, if black connects. So basically, white has to succeed in this fight, and black has to live. So this could be the final. Suddenly, we're in a final decisive fight here. So just to go back a few moves, black pushed through, white pressed here, threatening to cut at h, that's h9, and black didn't answer it. So this finished it off white's group on the lower side. And white cuts. So basically the question is, can black live there? Capturing the few stones in the center would not be good enough for white. So white has to do better than that. I don't really see how black's going to live, though. It's not clear to me. That looks like a possible move. Zach Gormley is saying, do I prefer to review without AI? I have more fun, and I think I can give comments that work for people better without the AI, actually. It does tend to get in the way sometimes. So my diagrams, I think I make better diagrams that are more explanatory when I'm just doing it by myself. And they're more useful for, I'm hoping they're more useful for the people watching. Whereas the AI has a good assessment of positional judgment is better. So sometimes the AI will give a better assessment of the position. Sacrificing and connecting to the top, I sort of doubt that. I think in that trade, black would have been losing something. Yes, so black crawls. If black can live on the second line here, maybe that's going to be good enough. So at this point, white has a choice of pushing through at the third line, which would be this variation. And let's see, how would black continue? Black would probably just connect here. So this would go back to a calculation of the score. This is probably going to be good enough for black, if black gets the whole side like this. So the stronger move for white... Oh, white did play that move. So the stronger move would have been for white to play here and try to kill the whole thing. But he didn't do that, so we'll leave that for... you can ask the AI for that one. So when white plays here, black has a choice here. Actually, if black plays here, maybe white's planning to cut on underneath. This looks like it could be alive. Maybe, maybe not. Yes. So if that's the case, black would have to connect immediately. This would be maybe a bit different story. This would be better for white than the previous variation. And white does have the cut here. And if black escapes, then this position, white has a peep here. So white can reduce black's territory on the lower side. That was Cyphus saying that. And it's true. So black played here. This is a tesuji. So the question is, will white cut on the second line or what? If white cuts on the second line, let's do that. Then black will be able to capture this stone. And it looks like in this case, black's going to be able to, for instance, this would be alive in the center of the board. So that's basically black's plan there. And if white, so white cut, black pushed through. And this is, again, it looks like it's a forcing move. If white ignores it and plays down here, black will extend. White needs to save that stone on the second line, so black pushes through. And now those white stones in the center of the board are captured. So that's what the idea here is. Yeah, capturing those stones would be good enough for black. So, let's see, am I leaving everyone behind here? It all depends on this little tussle they're having on the left side, and whether that cut that white has at 018 is going to be relevant or not it's not clear to me yet. So let's see. Black will probably push through once more. So this was a trade. I'm not sure it was a good idea for black, objectively, the whole trade here. Let's see. But it's going to be an interesting fight. Black probably can push through once more. Let's do a diagram for black pushing through once more. And if white plays here, black can still play here. And this kind of thing would probably be okay for black. Black would connect here and would be able to save that stone. Or, let's see. Yeah, black would be able to save that stone. If black can save those 3 stones, I think this variation is okay for black. It's going to be sente. And in fact, actually, this is just bad for white. So white, and this would be bad for white too. So that's not working. White has to answer it here. So I'm expecting something like this. And white would capture those black stones in the center of the board. And white would have sente to do something like this. So let's get back to the game. Okay, so that was the variation. And white added a stone there in the center. Sorry. Yeah, and black has connected those 4 stones. So let's take a look at the score here. It's close game now, I suppose. So black has saved the 4 stones in the center. And white will be able to cut here. White will be able to cut here on the second line. So capturing these white stones on the lower side, that was about 40 points, I guess. 40 so points. But white also got a lot of profit in the center of the board. Yeah, it was a similar amount, and white does get to cut here on the lower side. I think on the whole this was success for white. Maybe it put KJ back in the game. And we're at the final stages of the endgame suddenly. So after this, there is this cut on the lower side, which is really big. And then there's just a few moves on the left side of the board, which are not so big. There's some endgame moves on the upper side. And the center, there's a lot of room in the center, but all of those moves are not very big. So this is going to be one of the latest games. It's going to go on for a while now. But the rest is probably going to be endgame. Also, white did cut there. Okay. So white cut here. Black played away. Okay, so it looks like they're going to finish the game. It's going to be fairly close now. And just to look at that lower side position once more. If black escapes, white can peep here. So white might start with this move, but can peep here for a double threat. So black cannot escape it too. Maybe no game tomorrow, said Reed Stevens, but I was pretty sure there would be no game tomorrow in the late middle game, but I'm not so sure now. It looks very close to me, and hard to say who's winning. Is there any way for black to push through at L10? L10, L10, well, black can cut that off, but white is going to be alive on the right side of the center. So it's not as if there's anything, it's not going to be decisive cutting white off. That was Peter asking about the cut at L10. Somewhere around there in the center of the board, black can cut white off, but white will be alive. W. Zhang is asking, is it generally true that it's impossible to turn the game around at this point for the side with less points? And in a game like this, which is starting to look very close, and I'm not really able to calculate it, if it's within 1.5, 2.5 points, I think it's quite possible, even at top levels, for the game to turn around. If it's more like 10 points before Komi or something like that, then I would say it's very difficult for it to turn around at this level of play. I think this might be their first game since the Sheen misclick, where he played on the first line in the opening of the game. C10? Nothing at C10 now. No, not anymore. Let's do that. So if white, let's have white play something like this. It's just not going to work. White connects here. So there's nothing happening here. But black can play it B10 and reduce the white territory here. So that's something that we might be seeing later in the endgame. And this ko here, it's a bit dangerous for white because of the cut at this point. And so white has to be careful of that ko. So it makes this an effective move for black. It's almost as if white has to answer it here, in which it would be keeping the tempo, a sente endgame. So that's a pretty big move. Now white did play the jump. And so we're left with a big move. There's still a big move at L8, L2 on the upper side. That taking that stone, it would make the corner white territory worth 13 points. Whereas if black plays it, that white territory is something 6 or 7 points. So that's 6-point difference in white's territory and a 3-point difference in black's territory. So that's a big move at L18. So I'm talking about L2 actually, this move here. This is a big move. Just because in this case white would have 13 points. If black plays that point, then the next step is that black gets to play here. And usually you get a shape like this where white has only about 6 points there. But I am ignoring the fact that white has this push, but there is still, it might not be the full 9 points, but it is a more than 6 point move. H13, H13. H13 is pretty big. It has the drawback that if black plays H13, that's Rick Rubenstein asking about black H13. The drawback to this move is that if black plays that, it gives white this forcing move here. So there's the fact that it fills a liberty. There is a negative effect there. So here white is threatening black in the corner. For instance, if black does play away, white will have at least this ko here, where white plays like this and can threaten black's group in the corner. So that's a bit dangerous for black. Yeah, so black added a stone. White 014. So that was a big move. Cutting and taking that one stone on the upper side is big. Let's see what's this about 014 or 014. The center of the board, at the end stages of the game, it's usually not very big. And this is an example of when the center of the board, it's just an area that maybe white can make a few points there. But not a lot of points. So it's smaller than these moves that the players are playing close to the edge of the board. And this move black played on the left side, that's also a big move. If white allows black to take the ko, white will eventually have to put a stone in at this point, for instance, to stop black from cutting there. So that's a big ko that could be starting here. If white were ahead, white would just connect here. But of course, that would give black sente. White doesn't really want to connect here, but if white plays this move, very much is going to depend on the ko here. Isaac is saying, who's leading? That's a good question. This is a position where we could get an exact answer maybe if we asked an AI. But yes. Okay, that must be what A. Solon is saying. Shin Minjun has a half-point win at this point. That's probably the AI's solution there. Which means that if it's human players playing, we don't really know. Getting back to the game. So white played away. Taking the one stone here is a big move. And black took the ko. Now black is threatening to start a ko inside white's territory. Let's see, does black have ko threats for it? Black needs 2 ko threats to win this ko. This is something that could actually happen. White's going to have some ko threats against black in the lower left corner. At least one. When black starts this ko, black's going to lose some points. When black loses the ko, that is. White has a ko threat here. This would be too big. This would be bigger than losing those stones there. White would save the group on the lower side and capture those 8 stones in the center of the board. Okay. Black did not play the ko. So we have this ko here, which black is not quite ready to play yet. Black doesn't have enough ko threats to do that variation I was just showing, where black puts a stone inside white's territory in an attempt to capture these 5 white stones. This is going to be a big loss if white connects the ko here. That's a black stone inside white's territory, and white wins the ko on the left too. So that's a double hit. So black needs some good ko threats. And white, as I was saying, white has that ko threat against black in the lower left. So maybe not ready for black to play the ko. But black is thinking of doing it. And white took the ko back. So black peeped here. Uh-oh, this is a big move. And white cannot push through. If white pushes through and black cuts, this would obviously capture the 3 stones. This would capture the 2 stones. If white plays here, sometimes this would work, but in this case, black just pushes through here. So that's bad for white. That means that white will have to back off here. If white backs off in this manner, then black will... This is a big profit for black. I think white might have overlooked that, actually. Yes, it could have been. Decision Scientist is saying, was that a blunder by KJ? And I think it must have been, because this is really big, and it's just very painful for white to lose what was going to be about 6 or 7 points. Will he slap himself in the face? There might be some live streams that are actually showing the players in the game, so it'd be interesting to see if he does. So this, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be good for black now. Which is sort of a pity, because it's going to end this series of games. Because it was a complete loss for white here. This white lost about 6 points locally. So to go back to the position there, white did not have time to take the ko yet, and should have just covered here. In which case white has something that looks like about 6 points there. That's a 6-point white territory. If we close the boundaries like this, then white will end up putting a stone in later. So eventually it will look like this. So white might, so just to do it like this, eventually white is going to put a stone in like this. So it's 6 points. White had 6 points there. And that's all gone. And white has to continue playing something. Oh, so he did resign. And so that's it for this game. And for the Nongshim Cup this year, it ended in the 13th round. So theoretically, this having 5 players for the 3 countries, it could have gone to the 14th round, but we finished with a Korean player left over. So Park didn't have to play a game. And this ends the tournament with a win for Korean team. So congratulations to the Korean team. Decision Scientist was a Japanese. Maybe he's writing Japanese. Arigatou gozaimashita. So thank you all for watching to the end, and I hope you enjoyed. And that's going to be it for this live stream. I think really Shinjin-so did a great job. He played some outstanding games. So we'll be watching him in the future, I'm sure. So thank you, everyone. and goodbye. I'll be back with some more next time I find next time there's a good international tournament, probably.